Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much, Mr. Minister, for joining us in the study on the methane review. I'd like to focus this issue, I think, on the fundamental question of trust. I mean, we're dealing with a climate catastrophe that's unfolding. The Prime Minister has made really powerful statements internationally. So when we have a fund to deal with something that's a planet killer like methane, we expect results. And I have to say I was really shocked when I read the Environment Commissioner's report that your department wasn't bothering to actually check whether or not emissions actually happened. They gave $134 million out the door, and they weren't checking whether the fundamental issue of methane reduction actually took place. That's pretty irresponsible, don't you think?
Well, Mr. Angus, I don't think that's actually what anybody said. So every project is measured, and in fact, part of the project is actually implementing measurement technologies to ensure that you are actually tracking emissions reductions. That's why we can actually say that from the first two tranches, we will achieve reductions in the range of 4.7 megatons, which is the equivalent of taking 1 million cars off the road. So I do not agree with your characterization.
Well, I hope you've taken 1 million cars off the road, Mr. Minister. But the fact is, most of the reductions that you can claim come from regulations. That's in the report. You don't have the ability to tell us what actually happened because you don't know. Your department, he said, when we set out to do this audit, I was hoping to get a firm number on what level of reduction was coming out of the emissions fund because it's called an emissions reduction fund. And we were surprised and disappointed to see that natural resources isn't doing the necessary tracking. Then he said to question whether there are, quote, any actual net emission reductions at all. So if you were just going to give $134 million to big oil, why didn't you just say it was an economic development fund? Why did you claim to the Canadian people that you were actually concerned about methane?
Thank you for the question. The program, as I indicated earlier, was designed initially as a COVID response measure to ensure that we were maintaining jobs in the sector at a time of low energy prices and to ensure that companies continued to reduce emissions in line with the regulations and beyond at a time when they would not be spending money on methane reductions given the state of the financial situation that they found themselves in. In that context, the program succeeded. It ensured that companies continued to focus on methane reductions. And I will tell you, some of those reductions were in some of them certainly were more. 97% of the projects focused on eliminating venting and flaring. The current regulations do not require the elimination of venting and flaring, and therefore most of the projects went well beyond the 2025 requirements.
It must be so hard, Minister, to have an environment commissioner.
Sorry, can I stop you I'm going to stop the clock. We've had just a slight issue with the interpretation, and I just wanted to, I've been asked ask the Minister to click on the interpretation and select mute original audio. That may help. And then if you can just readjust your mic, we've had it click out a couple of times when you've been speaking. If you're still having that audio issue. And yeah,
okay,
we'll try that again. Sorry, Mr. Angus, you're good to carry on.
Thank you. Well, yeah, I'm really pleased to see you talking about job retention and the economic development issues. But when the department set up this fund, job retention was not part of the assessment criteria. So again, if you want to give $134 million to big oil, then just say it. Why not say this is a subsidy? Because when the Environment Commissioner asked your officials for an explanation, they said their priority was the economic needs of the oil companies. So that's pretty straightforward. Why not just come here and say, hey, listen, we were in it was COVID, our Liberal member for Calgary needed to have jobs protected, so we wanted to hire people in the oil sector. Why didn't you just say that? Why did you come here and claim you were actually reducing methane when you don't have any proof that you did that because you weren't tracking it? That's what the Environment Commissioner told us. He said you were not looking at these issues.
Well, Mr. Angus, with all due respect, that's just not true. It is being tracked. It's tracked in every project, and I'm happy to have officials walk you through exactly how that methodology works. We use the methodology put out by the World Resources Institute. It is used by the International Energy Agency as well as organizations around the world. We have
No,
been able to
sorry,
show
Minister, I don't have much
4.7
time left. I don't have much time left, but the question is, you were claiming this when the Environment Commissioner is saying that you weren't. And he said what really worried him was the attitude of your officials. He said the attitude of your officials, that they didn't understand the concept of actually having baseline emissions data. Like, don't you think that that's really important? Or I guess it would be pretty convenient to be able to pull 1 million cars off the road and fictitiously if you don't have baseline emissions data. He said the response of your officials concerned him. He said he was disappointed by your department. And he said the attitude of your officials, quote, doesn't bode well. I think you should come here and say, we're sorry, we screwed up, we're going to fix it because the planet needs it. That's what trust is. To
Point
come
of
and
order,
give a spin
Mr.
is
Mr.
not
Chair.
credible.
We're not here to conduct a character assassination or explore opinions of other people's perception of how other people acted. We're here to explore data. We're here to explore the report. And we're here to talk to the minister about the program. So with all due respect, I think we should focus on that.
Well,
My time is being interrupted by Liberals.
I stopped the clock.
Thank you for doing that. Yeah. I am referring to what the Environment Commissioner said. If the Liberals want to interfere and try and stop me from doing my job as a member is to ask the minister. So I know you've given him a good breathing space, but the question that's being asked is what the Environment Commissioner raised. And the Environment Commissioner raised his serious concerns that the attitudes of your department, this is on your watch, don't bode well for future projects. How do you explain that?
Well, Mr. Angus, I would say the officials in my department are professionals, just as the commissioner is a professional. They had a difference of opinion with respect to the boundary conditions that one uses in accounting for emissions reductions. Ours aligns with the World Resource Institute and the International Energy Agency's methodology. He had a broader definition of emissions that actually would be captured under the cap, and there was a legitimate difference of opinion.
We're out of time on this one. Thank you.